Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
My name is Helen Hosein. I work for a company called Softwire. It's like software, but with an I. I'm a project manager there. I've been a project manager for nearly 10 years, and I've been at Softwire for about 2 years now. We work with a wide variety of clients who all have different constraints, all have different challenges associated with them, and want us to use different methodologies, different commercial models in order to meet their business needs. So we've come across a lot of different problems to solve, and one of our biggest clients relies on fixed price projects. So I've done quite a few of those while still trying to maintain an agile approach. So this is a problem that's very close to my heart. I go to a lot of these sorts of events, conferences, meetups, and so on, and there's always at least one person who puts their hand up and says, okay, all this agile stuff is great, but you haven't met the people in my organization. You have no idea what my clients are like. They're not going to accept all of this newfangled stuff. They want everything old school. They want piles of paperwork. And they have very fixed constraints. Otherwise, this project is never getting signed off. A lot of the time when budget is a constraint, the thing that comes to mind first is fixed price, fixed scope. That model is all around us. It's ubiquitous. You pay a price, you get a thing. The thing is standardized. We know pretty much how long it's going to take to make this burger, what it's going to taste like, and what it's going to cost. Software projects, on the other hand, are not so standardized. They're full of surprises. They're unique little snowflakes. They are not so formulaic. They have unique aims, unique challenges, and unique risks. And it takes creativity to respond to the surprises in your software projects and take advantage of the good ones and do something to work around the bad surprises. The more we pretend that we can plan everything out and we can know what all the surprises are going to be on a project, the more that we're just trying to predict the future, which is impossible. And making those projects more and more formulaic makes them look more and more like this. And we don't like that, do we? We're here because we like continuous delivery and we like agile, and we don't like that. So what do we do to avoid that? A lot of the time, we take that big predefined scope, we chop it up into little pieces, which we call user stories, and we schedule all of those user stories into 2-week sprints. We put some daily stand-ups in the diary, and we declare we are doing agile. Behold, our schedule of all the agile stories we're going to deliver in the next 26 sprints. When you take a big predefined scope, a fixed scope, chop it up into little pieces, you don't automatically get agile, you just get this. So how do we actually run a fixed price project, a fixed budget project, in an agile way? The thing that makes software projects different from burgers is they're full of surprises. And in order to respond to those surprises, we need to embrace change. Change is what Agile is good at. Agile values adaptability. So at Softwire, in running a lot of fixed price projects, we've come up with some creative ways to make Agile work, embrace change, and make things more adaptable. If the price is fixed, we have to be as adaptable as possible in every other area in order not to go over budget. Our technical director, Matthew Richards, is working on a white paper where he's codified some of our ideas into 3 different frameworks. If you follow him on Twitter, then you'll be the first to know when his white paper is done. So I'm going to present those three frameworks now. Here's the first one. Fixed price, fixed points. It's a bit like a set menu. You can choose which starter you'd like, which main you'd like, which dessert you'd like. If I decide I want the panna cotta instead of the apple crumble, it's not going to change the price because I'm swapping two things that are equivalent. The way this works is that the backlog is like a menu. We estimate all of the stories that we've got in the backlog, assign each one a points value, and as the project progresses, then the product owner can decide as we go along, we don't need this story anymore, we actually need this new thing. And we find something that we can swap that's equivalent effort and equivalent risk so that the budget stays the same. Now, there's some assumptions to go with that, obviously. For one thing, are all 5-point stories created equal? You want to make sure that you're not accidentally swapping a filet for a salad. And it's possible that as the story progresses, the value of a point can change over time. A lot of people are speaking out against estimates entirely because they can be rubbish. So there are some risks associated with this method. It's not perfect, but it does give you a framework to work within that gives something familiar to your stakeholders and enables them to change the backlog as you go along and as you learn things. An example of a project where I've done this is where we were working on a bespoke CMS that we'd built for this client. It was designed to handle music events, and they wanted to extend it to include classical. So we had to account for things like composers. And we also had to bring in a database full of lots of event data from dating back over 100 years, really lots and lots of data. And once we'd imported all that data, we found that the front end generated by the CMS completely fell over when you tried to navigate it. Even once we'd fixed the performance issues, you could find what you wanted, but it wasn't great. We proposed some design changes to the client, and in order to get those into scope, we found some tasks that added up to roughly an equivalent effort and equivalent risk for the project. And we were able to get the changes into scope, taking out some lower priority things, and it was under budget. The second framework, unless someone's got questions about this one. Second framework, fixed price, fixed resource. This is like having a bar tab. You hire a mixologist for the night. This guy will make anything you want, no menu required. And once the bar tab has run out, the party is over. This is just like a time and materials project, but you know that you've got a fixed budget. So you build as much software as you can build, and when you've run out of budget, you stop. No one can possibly go over budget if you know when to stop. An example of a time when I've done this is a project where we were replacing this hideous macro-fill spreadsheet with a nice, sleek web app. We set up continuous deployment, in fact, and we worked through a prioritized backlog. Every week we met with the client and we revised what we were going to work on over the next week or two, and we let her know how much budget she had left, so she could then decide what was most important to use her remaining budget on. At the end of the project, we shook hands. We said, okay, we're out of budget. We gave her the login so she could maintain the project going forward. And that was it. Because we'd been doing continuous deployment, there was no extra testing and release phase to worry about that could go on forever. We were just done. And there was no way that we could have gone over because she knew when we were going to run out of budget and she told us when to stop. The third framework is fixed price minimum deliverable, and this is a hybrid of the previous two. So you have a minimum deliverable, which is sort of your MVP, that is the basic set of functionality that your client has to get out of this project. And on top of that, you build as much as you can in a bar tab style of extra features. So for example, we had a project about a year ago where a client wanted to build an app but make it absolutely beautiful. They wanted to appeal to the younger market. So they hired some designers and they came up with some gorgeous designs and animations and things that would bedazzle the young folks today. So we built the app with just the minimum functionality so we could get the content in a bare bones way. And then we had some of the budget allocated for what we called UI Sugar. And we brought their designers in every Tuesday, sat and paired with them, and built all the extra UI bits gradually until the UI Sugar budget had run out. It's a bit like this. You've got your minimum functionality, and then you build up all the sugar on top of it. So to recap, the three frameworks are fixed price, fixed points, also known as the set menu, fixed price, fixed resource, also known as the bar tab, and fixed price minimum deliverable, the hybrid. Any questions so far? All right, then. In my experience, the scariest thing that can happen on a fixed price project is you run out of budget and you haven't got anything useful to show for it. This is what every product owner, every stakeholder, everyone who's ever had to sign off a project is scared of. The way we avoid this is to use continuous delivery. If we use the bar tab approach with continuous delivery, then all our check-ins are potentially releasable. And that means we've always got working software. We can stop that project at any point, even before the budget runs out, and we've got working software. We will always have something that's usable. So the cure for the unfinished project is continuous delivery. You will never go over budget. I'd like to leave you guys with one last thought. This is the first principle on which the Agile Manifesto is based. Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. If we deliver early and continuously, we can never go over budget. Yeah.
Hang on. 1 second.
Yeah, it's campfire time now, so questions and your stories, your experiences.
Okay, so thanks for the presentation. It's really interesting. In the set menu option,
Yeah.
when you're doing the project planning, do you test out to see, okay, this combined set of food or features will equate to the budget? I mean, do you do an amount of planning like that with the customer to kind of look at the scenarios that might evolve from what is the backlog?
Yeah.
You do that. Okay, so the customer has some sense at the outset that I could have this or that, but I won't know until I'm progressing through it.
So the way that we've done it in the past is we've come up with a scope that could be a fixed scope if nothing ever changed, which it always does. But on the odd occasion that nothing ever changed, then that set of things could be a fixed scope, which we believe would be delivered for that budget. That flexibility is built in so that if something else comes up that they want instead, or if we discover we don't need something, then it's possible to deliver a different scope within the same budget.
And a correlated question is, when you're looking at, you talked about a value points system, is that the cost to build it or the value to the customer?
That's a good question. In this case, it's usually the cost to build it, because that's the traditional expectation when costing out a project is, we've got this much money, we're going to pay you for it, and you're going to spend it on the cost of building it. There are people who base their projects on the value delivered to the customer, but that's a different framework I think that's a good way of doing things, but that's not something that I have experience in personally.
Hi, yeah, just a question. On your fixed points and all that, how much percentage can you actually include in the project to build up your continuous delivery capability? Or is it something that you've got pre-existing and you reuse on each project?
It should, like Jazz was saying, you should be able to just summon an environment, ideally. If you can't, if you've got to work with the client's environment and it's rubbish and it takes a certain amount of setup time, then you have to budget that in as something that you need to spend time on. Or similarly, if you have to set up an Azure account or something that costs money, an AWS account, then you've got to put that in the budget as an expense up front that you're definitely going to have to spend money on.
And I guess my follow-up question is, and most clients would appreciate the additional costs. You know, let's say if it's 5% of the project or 2%, they're happy to take that additional points to actually have continuous delivery. There's quite a high percentage of clients that actually accept that?
Yeah, quite a few do. It's usually not a significant cost in the grand scheme of things. If you're building an app that costs 500K, the cost of setting up continuous delivery is really small compared to that entire cost. And if you can impress upon them the amount of risk that you're removing, because they will have usable software at any point and they can stop at any point and still have usable software, that's worth it.
Thank you.
Oh, there's one there.
So you're working on a small project with a couple of developers. How
Yeah.
do you mitigate someone leaving? Because that's really difficult to work out in a budget, that if you have someone who leaves and they're quite pivotal to the role or the job.
Yeah, that's a good question. That is a very good question. On a larger team, obviously, you spread around the knowledge as much as you can, and any one person isn't going to be super key to the project's success. On a smaller team, you still try to do that, but the effect of someone leaving is felt a lot more strongly on a smaller team. You pretty much just have to hope that you have enough notice that they can transfer their knowledge to someone else in enough time. I think I'm fortunate in that the structure in which I work means that teams are changing a lot because we've got a lot of people who are moving from project to project. And while a team is usually steady over the length of a project, we have people who have worked together before, generally speaking, and perhaps have worked together on a similar project before. So it's quite easy if someone leaves to bring someone else in and have them ramp up because they've worked with the other person before and they kind of can get a sense of what's going on quickly. But ideally, you don't want that to happen. If you've got a small team, you want to safeguard as much as possible against someone leaving in the middle of a project. If you know they're going to leave, maybe make sure that that project is going to end before they leave. And treat people nicely so they don't want to leave. Got one here, one there.
Thank you. Just out of interest, how long normally do you budget for, like length of time of these projects? And the second question is, from experience, what's the best time you prefer when you're negotiating?
So how long the project is depends on the client and what they're trying to get done. I've run projects that have taken a year or more. I've run projects that have only taken 2 or 3 months. It's obviously shorter projects are easier to control, but it depends on the client's needs, and I think it's important to be able to adapt to whatever the client needs in order to get a project done. If a project is going to be really, really long, like 10 years, then maybe it should be several projects. Not everyone is going to run things that way. Some clients are not going to be happy with splitting something that big up into several projects. So sometimes it's just necessary to find ways to mitigate that internally whilst letting the client have a project that they're happy with in the when the contract is written. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
I have a mic. So you said you usually will stop when the budget is over.
Yeah.
But how do you guarantee and how do you make the client happy and the customer happy that he really gets some value of the product? Yes, the product works because you use continuous delivery, but does it make any business value for him at the end when the budget is over? How do you make sure that there is also a business value behind what you built?
That's a great question. And in the example that I gave, we were working with the client on a regular basis. We were talking to her every day, and we were meeting with her every week. And we were getting her to constantly use what we were deploying. So we weren't just deploying into a vacuum. We were continuously deploying to an environment that she could use. So she knew what we were building at any given point, and she was the one telling us what to build next. So she had the choice of building things that delivered value for her business, as opposed to building things that she came up with months ago that might have changed over time. So she, by maintaining that constant communication, we were able to make sure that we stayed aligned with her needs. So when the budget was running out and we did stop the project, she had something that she was happy with because she had participated in building it.
Do you use some scale of priority for the backlog tasks?
Yeah, the question is, do we use some scale of priority for the backlog tasks? Yes, we tried, in that particular case, we tried to actually just make a list that was always prioritized of everything that we knew of. And of course, we could add stuff in as needed. I think it's important to understand what the high priority tasks are so that when you do spend your client's money, you're spending it on the things that are most important to them. I think this will have to be the last question because we're running out of time.
Okay. Just a question as well about measuring success. So we talked about the stakeholder, but also if you've got like it's like a web scale project with lots and lots of actual users. Does a client typically have priority in their budgets to say that they're going to spend some of their budget to actually build measurement capability so you can, have whatever analytics you want off the back? Or is it typically it's all about value, and less about any kind of like feedback? Have you found a lot of customers who have actually incorporated some element of feedback from customers in their projects?
Most of them do, yes. Most of them do want some sort of analytics so that they can understand that the value being delivered is valuable to their end users, not just to their idea of what the end users want. It depends on the type of app that we're building, though. If we're building a tool for internal use, for instance, they may not need analytics. They might just have a small group of people using it, and we might just spend time with those people rather than have it go through the process of analytics. It depends on the project itself, but in most cases I've found that analytics is one of the high priority things that needs to get done.
Thank you.
We have 1 minute, so I think I can do one more question if it's a small one. Yeah.
Quick question. I liked your unfinished bridge slide. My question really is, you're looking with software to start delivering something pretty quickly, say in the first week, 2 weeks of value, and I can understand how that might work with software, but with something that is, say, like a relational database or quite extensive middleware infrastructure that you can't really start getting out in a couple of weeks, that might take 3 months perhaps or something longer. How do you start? How do you mitigate or the unfinished bridge scenario? Where you can't break it down to little deliverables to get out quickly.
That might be one of the cases where it makes sense to go with the fixed price minimum deliverable model, where the minimum deliverable includes that infrastructure. And then once you've got something that's working, then you can build on that in more of the bar tab type of scenario where you've got something that's the absolute minimum that you need in order for it to be working, and then you build on that bit by bit with the remaining budget that you have allocated. So you're not spending too much time gold plating things when the core functionality still needs work. So you get that minimum deliverable in place before building on it with extra sugar. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, that's it. We're out of time. Thank you, everyone.